Hello friends, and welcome to Storytime with Teacher Julian. Today's book, Little Red Riding Hood. It's the story of a little girl who takes a basket of goodies to her grandmother who is not feeling well, and some of the adventures that happen along her journey. It was written by Bonnie Dobkin and illustrated by Subhendu Kamakar. Let's get started. Little Red Riding Hood. Oh, I have to get ready. Much better. Once upon a time, a little girl lived with her mother and brother in a small cottage by the edge of a forest. Her favorite piece of clothing was a long red cape with a soft, silky hood. She wore it so often that soon everyone started calling her Little Red Riding Hood. One day, Little Red Riding Hood was bored and looking for something to do. "You could help sweep the floors," said her mother, who was busy painting the fence. "No," said Little Red Riding Hood, "I don't think that's what I want to do." "You could help clean the yard," said her brother, who was busy chopping wood. "No," said Little Red Riding Hood, "I know that isn't what I want to do." So when Little Red Riding Hood is saying she's bored, it means she's unhappy because she doesn't have anything to do. "Then you could visit your grandmother," said her mother. "You're old enough to go by yourself, and you haven't seen her for weeks." "That's exactly what I want to do," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Grandmother lives on the other side of the woods. It will be an adventure." Look at her face. How do you think she feels right now? Pretty happy. So Little Red Riding Hood's mother packed a basket full of treats for the girl to take to her grandmother. "Just remember," said her mother, "the woods can be very dangerous. So when you leave, please go straight to grandmother's and don't be late." So when she says she's packing treats to go in the basket, do you know what treats are? It's like food or drinks or something that someone might like, maybe some of their favorites. What would you pack? "She won't listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Oh, and dear, something else. Before you go, only talk to those you know." What does that mean? Only talk to those you know. "She won't listen," said her brother. "Oh, yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Oh, and one last thing, sweetheart. From the path you shouldn't stray, or you could get lost someday." What does that mean? What does stray mean? Stray means to wander off from where you're going. If you're going from here to here, and all of a sudden you start going somewhere else, that's wandering or straying. "She won't listen," said her brother. "Yes, I will," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Of course she will," said her mother. "Goodbye, dear. Give your grandmother a big hug for me." "Yes, mother," said Little Red Riding Hood. Then she headed out the door, down the path, and into the forest. There was so much to see in the woods: a sleeping owl, a giant mushroom, an amazing spider web. Then Little Red Riding Hood remembered what her mother had said. "When you leave, please go straight to Grandma's, and don't be late." "But," thought Little Red Riding Hood, "Mother surely would want me to enjoy the forest." So she stopped and looked around. Just then, a dark shape stepped out from behind one of the trees. It was a wolf, and he was smiling a charming smile. "Why, hello, little girl," said the wolf. "Isn't this a lovely day?" Little Red Riding Hood remembered what her mother had said. "Something else before you go. Only talk to those you know." "But," thought Little Red Riding Hood, "he seems like such a friendly wolf. Mother surely wouldn't want me to be rude." "Hello, Mr. Wolf," said Little Red Riding Hood. "Yes, it is a lovely day. And you seem to be such a delicious, by which I mean delightful, child." The wolf's smile grew even bigger. "What might your name be?" "Everyone calls me Little Red Riding Hood," said the girl. "A splendid name," said the wolf. "And where might you be headed, Little Red, if I may call you that?" "You may," said Little Red Riding Hood. "I'm bringing my grandmother this basket of treats. She just lives on the other side of the forest." So when the wolf said that Little Red had a splendid name, it means that it was a very nice name, an excellent name. Like he really liked it. "How kind of you," the wolf said. "In fact, wouldn't your grandmother like a lovely bouquet of flowers as well? There are some just over that hill, down by the edge of the river." Red Riding Hood remembered what her mother said. "From the path you shouldn't stray, or you could get lost someday." "But," thought Little Red Riding Hood, "Mother surely would want me to bring Grandmother some flowers." "That's a wonderful idea, Mr. Wolf. I'll pick some right away." So she scampered off into the woods. "Goodbye, Little Red," the wolf called after her. "I'm sure we'll meet again very soon." And then he whispered, "By which I mean for lunch." The moment Red Riding Hood disappeared, the wolf dashed down the path towards the grandmother's cottage. He tapped lightly on the door. "Grandmother," he said in his best little girl voice, "it's me, Little Red Riding Hood." "Little Red? Really? How wonderful!" Grandmother flung open the door. "Wait," she said, "you're not Little Red Riding Hood." "Sadly no," said the wolf, "by which I mean goodbye." And he swallowed the grandmother in one big gulp. "And now," said the wolf, patting his stomach, "I'll wait for dessert." Sometime later, Red Riding Hood came out of the woods. She was dirty and rumpled, and there were burrs in her hair. "It was much harder to find the path again than I thought it would be," she said. She was surprised to find her grandmother's door wide open. She stepped inside. "Grandmother, are you home?" "Yes, dear," came a scratchy voice from the bedroom. "But I'm in bed. I'm afraid I have a nasty cold." Red Riding Hood followed the voice into the bedroom. The curtains were closed, and it was dark, very dark. Grandmother was wearing a floppy nightcap, and the blankets were pulled up past her nose. Red Riding Hood moved towards the bed. Grandmother's eyes looked very odd. "Why, Grandmother," she said, "what big eyes you have." "The better to see you with, my dear. Come close so I can give you a big hug." Red Riding Hood took another step and saw two triangles poking up under her nightcap. "And Grandmother, what big ears you have." "The better to hear you with, my dear. Can you come a little closer still?" Look at the triangles. Just then, the blanket slipped down from the grandmother's face and revealed two rows of very sharp teeth. But, Grandma," said Little Red Riding Hood, "what big teeth you have." "That better to eat you with," roared the wolf, leaping out of the grandmother's bed. Red Riding Hood screamed. She ran out of the bedroom, through the main door, and into the kitchen, slamming the doors behind her. She clambered into a cabinet and yanked the door shut. "Oh, why didn't I listen to Mother?" she thought. "If I hadn't stopped in the woods, I wouldn't have met the wolf. If I hadn't talked to the wolf, I wouldn't have left the path. If I hadn't left the path, I wouldn't have been late to Grandmother's. Then none of this would have happened." In the kitchen, she could hear the wolf calling to her. "Where are you, Little Red?" he said. "There's no need to hide. By which I mean I'm gonna find you and eat you no matter what." Just then, something crashed. A voice yelled. Dishes smashed. The sounds got louder and louder and wilder, and then everything was quiet. Little Red Riding Hood peeked out from the cabinet. There stood her brother, his axe in one hand. He was helping Grandmother step out of the wolf. "Thank you, dear," said her grandmother. "It was very dark in there." The brother looked at Little Red Riding Hood. "I knew you wouldn't listen." Little Red Riding Hood scrambled out of the cabinet and gave her big brother a big hug. "You were right," she said. "But I will from now on." Then Red Riding Hood, her brother, and their grandma all sat down together to eat the treats from the basket. The end. There's the back of the book. Little Red Riding Hood. It says, Little Red Riding Hood, is Grandma gonna need a shave, or is something scary wearing her nightgown? See what happens when a young girl who strays from the path to Grandma's house discovers that she's been tricked by the sly wolf she met along the way. Little Red Riding Hood. I have so many questions after reading the story. Why didn't Little Red Riding Hood listen to what her mother said? There were 4 things. Go straight there. Don't be late. Only talk to those you know. And from the path you shouldn't stray, or you could get lost someday. 4 things. And what happened? Talk to the wolf. Straight off the path. She was late. She didn't go straight there. She didn't listen to any of them. 4 things. She listened to 0 of them. What would you do if you were going to go somewhere? My mom or somebody in your family said, hey, could you go and do this? We're going to the store. We're going to school. We're going to go visit family members. Remember these 4 things. Would you be able to remember those 4 things? We shall see. Well, my friends, I enjoyed that book. I hope you enjoyed our reading of Little Red Riding Hood the first time. Until next time, I'm going to say goodbye.